Welcome everybody to the Mid-Atlantic Tours webinar for the FY26 fiscal year. My name is Sarah Lewis, and I'm the Program Director for Performing Arts and the Accessibility Coordinator at Mid-Atlantic Arts. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm a white woman with very short brown hair. I'm wearing a white button-up tank top today, and I'm zooming in from my home located on lands known as Baltimore, Maryland. I want to acknowledge the Piscataway and the Susquehannock peoples as historic stewards of this land and the enduring presence of the Piscataway, Lumbee, and the Eastern Band of Cherokee community members in Baltimore City today. And as I acknowledge the land, I also want to acknowledge the stresses of this week in the wake of the US presidential election. I hope you're moving at the pace that you need to this morning, and I'm really grateful to be here with all of you today. So this morning, we're here to talk about the Mid-Atlantic Tours presenter program. I'm here with my colleague, Andrew, Program Director International, and my colleague, Steph, who is the Program Associate for International. And Andrew will introduce himself in a minute. Today, we are going to share information about the Mid-Atlantic Tours program, focusing on the process for presenters to receive subsidy from Mid-Atlantic Arts to present an artist on this year's roster. This webinar is meant to serve as an overview and a resource. Before being in touch with a roster artist or manager, I strongly encourage you to review the FY26 Mid-Atlantic Tours guidelines at midatlanticarts.org. You can reach out to me or Andrew with questions about this program or the guidelines anytime. My email is slewis@midatlanticarts.org, and Andrew's is andrew@midatlanticarts.org. We'll share it a few times throughout this process, and I'll pass to Andrew for our next slide.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Allness Olson, and my pronouns are he, him. I am a white man with blue eyes, blonde hair, and I am wearing a blue button-up shirt and a light brown sweater. As Sarah mentioned, I run the international grant programs at Mid-Atlantic Arts. For today's webinar, we have about 30 minutes of information to share with you through this slide deck, and then we'll have plenty of time for any questions that may come up. If you have a question at any point during the presentation, please enter it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Live captioning is provided as well. We have Kelsey here with us, helping us out with that. To turn on live captions, on the control bar of your Zoom screen, select More, and then select Show Captions. Throughout your Mid-Atlantic Tours process, if you are in need of accommodation, please contact me or Sarah Lewis at 410-539-6656, extension 110, or you can email either of us. So here is our agenda for today. We will share information about Mid-Atlantic Arts and then get into details about the Mid-Atlantic Tours program, including how we selected the artists, the roster artists that are part of the program this year, and eligibility requirements for presenters. We'll talk you through the process for working with a roster artist and submitting an application for a subsidy. We'll then end with details about dates and a question and answer session. So just a little bit about Mid-Atlantic Arts. Mid-Atlantic Arts supports artists, presenters, and organizations through unique programming, grant support, partnerships, and information sharing. Created in 1979, Mid-Atlantic Arts is aligned with the region's state arts councils and the National Endowment for the Arts. We are one of 6 regional arts organizations. Mid-Atlantic Arts' mission is to nurture and fund the creation and presentation of diverse artistic expression and to connect people to meaningful arts experiences within our region and beyond. You can learn more about Mid-Atlantic Arts and our work at midatlanticarts.org and about all of the regional arts organizations, or RAOs, at the RAO website at usregionalarts.org. Both links are going in the chat now. Sarah?
Yeah, so let's get started talking about Mid-Atlantic Tours. Mid-Atlantic Tours is a grant opportunity for presenters in Mid-Atlantic Arts geographic region, which includes Delaware, the District of Columbia, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Virginia, West Virginia, and the native nations that share this geography. The program is funded through the National Endowment for the Arts Regional Engagement Program, which provides funding to the regional arts organizations to support touring across each respective RAO's states and regions. You can find out more about the REP program at the link in this chat. Mid-Atlantic Tours supports robust touring of select roster artists through the Mid-Atlantic Arts geographic region with at least 2 engagement activities in each presenter's community. The fiscal year we're here to discuss today is FY26, which runs from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. Presenters interested in receiving a Mid-Atlantic Tours grant must contract with a roster artist during that window of time to be considered for support. We're going to talk about the details of the program today, but I strongly encourage you to review the guidelines for the program at midatlanticarts.org before beginning a conversation with a roster artist or manager. Now let's talk about how the roster artists were selected for this year. First, I'll share about how the artists based in Mid-Atlantic Arts region were selected. The roster artist interest form was open to artists based in the region in summer of 2024. We received almost 100 submissions, and from there, a curatorial advisement panel supported the review process and provided guidance in the selection of artists under consideration. Next, Mid-Atlantic Arts developed a presenter interest survey based on recommendations from the curatorial advisors sent to regional presenters in August of 2024. Hopefully, some of you on the call completed that survey. You can learn more about the selection process for the roster artists, including reviewing the selection priorities, as well as the recorded information session for artists on Mid-Atlantic Tours program page, which is going in the chat now. So here are the 6 regional roster artists. We have Bindlestiff Family Circus, Brent Burkhead, Soledad Barrio and Noche Flamenca, The Experience Band and Show, The Missing Elements, and the Paza Experience. I'll now hand it off to Andrew to talk about how the international artists were selected.
Thank you, Sarah. International artists are selected through an application process. Artists from 13 countries across Iberoamerica, which is the Iberian Peninsula and much of Latin America, can apply to our partner, Ibermusicas, to be considered for the touring roster. These artists must have a manager in their home country, someone working in the US as their booking agent, and invitation letters from 2 Mid-Atlantic nonprofit venues. Of the applications we received, 3 ensembles are selected, and each of those groups receives $5,000 from Ibermusicas to help cover visa expenses, as visa expenses are one of the greatest hurdles keeping artists from performing in the US. So up on the screen now, we have the 3 international roster artists that were selected through this process. From Argentina, the Orchestra of Indigenous Instruments and New Technologies. From Colombia, Nidia Gongora. And from Spain, Laura Bay. You can review the full roster of 9 artists at midatlanticarts.org on the Mid-Atlantic Tours program page. There we have artists' photos, fee ranges, media samples, and tour manager contacts in a downloadable PDF on the program page, and we're dropping a direct link to that PDF in the chat now. If you want to learn more about these artists and hear directly from them and their tour managers about the work that they could bring to your community, I encourage you to sign up for the Roster Artist Share, coming up on November 19th, 2024. This will be a chance for you to hear from each roster artist, see work samples, and if you want, participate in breakout rooms to ask the artists any questions about their work directly. The link to register for that is in the chat. Sarah?
Yeah, so thanks, Andrew. If you're watching this webinar, it's likely that you're interested in engaging a Mid-Atlantic Tours roster artist with support from Mid-Atlantic Tours. To meet the eligibility requirements for the support, presenters must be based in the Mid-Atlantic region, be a 501c3 nonprofit organization, or be a unit of state or local government, or federally recognized Indian tribal governments. You must demonstrate organizational administrative capacity to complete all the required project components in collaboration with the roster artist and their tour manager. And you must be in good standing with Mid-Atlantic Arts at the time of application with no overdue or outstanding reports or grant documents. So how are we defining presenter? For this program, Mid-Atlantic Arts defines presenter as an organization that financially compensates an artist or company that is a separate entity from the presenter for performance and engagement activities in the presenter's community. Producing organizations that solely create artistic work or assemble artists to perform as ensembles for performances are not eligible to apply. So what about presenting history? Presenters do not necessarily need to have a history of engaging professional touring artists as an ongoing or significant part of their organization's activity to present a Mid-Atlantic Tours roster artist with support from Mid-Atlantic Tours. However, organizations without a history of presenting touring artists will be asked to describe their administrative plan for engaging the artist within their existing staff structure and among other organizational priorities.
So, how does the program work? Here are the steps. Presenters reach out directly to roster artist tour managers. Presenters and tour managers negotiate terms of the engagement by March 27th, 2025. Presenters need to submit countersigned letters of agreement to tour managers by this date. Tour managers then make funding recommendations to Mid-Atlantic Arts. After receiving a funding recommendation from a tour manager, presenters receive an intent to award notification. Mid-Atlantic Arts issues grant applications to presenters based on that recommendation, and presenters complete applications in May of 2025. Grants are then formally awarded in early July 2025, and the touring of these artists takes place at some point between July 1st, 2025 and June 30th, 2026.
So I mentioned earlier that you must work with the roster artist for 2 engagement activities. Let's talk about what those look like now. Roster artists and their tour manager and presenters must work together to plan at least 2 engagement activities at each venue. At least one of those 2 engagement activities must be a performance of at least 30 minutes that is open to the public. It can be ticketed or free. It can be repeated multiple times during the engagement or performed only one time. In addition, there must be one other kind of engagement activity. This could be a workshop, it could be a post-show discussion, or really any other kind of activity that the presenter and the artist feel like would be a good fit for that presenter's community. While we're here, I want to talk a little bit about relationships. This program is not a menu from which you can purchase as a presenter a prepackaged performance. Instead, I invite you to use the roster as an opportunity to begin a relationship with one or multiple artists on the roster, or to continue that relationship if you've already had a chance to work with one of these artists in the past. We ask that the artists list an approximate fee range, as you'll see in the materials we provide, but that range should really be the start of the conversation, not the end. Use it as a jumping off point to begin your conversations and know that the roster artist may need to reassess based on the specifics of touring to your community. If there's an artist you're interested in working with on the roster, you'll want to reach out to the tour manager and request a meeting and discuss the engagement activities that you're interested in bringing to your community. I'll pass it to Andrew. Oh, nope, I'll keep talking about the Potential Grants Award. So the Potential Grant Award for Mid-Atlantic Tours is dependent on the recommendation from the tour manager. So I want to stress that what is Outlined in the information we've shared is the maximum that any presenter can receive for the support of one roster artist uh, on the tour roster. Tour managers may not recommend you for the full amount depending on how they're structuring their tour. So the maximum grant award is made up of two components, a fee subsidy and other eligible expenses. The fee subsidy component is a maximum of 50% of the artist's compensation, and the other eligible expenses are up to $2,000. So let me give you an example. If you were in dialogue with a tour manager for an engagement with an artist fee of $8,000, you could get a maximum of $6,000 from Mid-Atlantic Tours. The breakdown of that would be $4,000, which would be a 50% match for your $8,000 artist fee, and $2,000 for other eligible expenses. Tour managers may recommend a lower percentage than 50% if they are working to distribute their funds to as many presenters as possible. Please be patient with the tour managers. You are welcome and encouraged to be clear about what you need as a presenter to make an engagement work, but know that they are coordinating with many presenters at one time for this program, and they may need to get back to you with their final recommendation. Please also keep in mind that tour managers do not make the final grant award offer. That is going to come from Mid-Atlantic Arts. Now I'll pass it to Andrew to talk about the grant detail.
Thanks, Sarah. So regarding the grant award, all funds distributed by Mid-Atlantic Arts through Mid-Atlantic Tours must be matched dollar for dollar with non-federal funds, since the funding for this program comes from the NEA's Regional Engagement Program. Funding awarded by Mid-Atlantic Arts is restricted to the specific direct costs of the project as detailed in the presenter grant award section of the guidelines and can't be used for indirect costs. Additionally, any air travel directly paid by the presenter in whole or in part with this grant or the match must follow the provisions of the Fly America Act. Any air travel must be done on a U.S. flag air carrier, which can include service provided under a codeshare agreement with a foreign air carrier when the ticket or documentation for an electronic ticket identifies the U.S. flag air carrier's designator code and flight number. Exceptions to the Fly America Act are outlined in the grant award agreement, and that's hopefully all you'll have to do with the Fly America Act. It's a real fun one. As far as funding priorities, as the tour managers are in dialogue with presenters, we have asked them to keep the following funding priorities in mind. The tour managers can engage with any presenter that meets the eligibility requirements, but these are additional lenses we've asked tour managers to consider. Geographic breadth. A requirement we have for the tour managers is that no more than 40% of their total allocated funds go to presenters in a single state or jurisdiction. In addition, small and mid-sized presenters serving rural communities and presenters whose engagement activities align with the roster artist's goal for their tour are other funding priorities.
All right. So if you want to present a roster artist through Mid-Atlantic Arts, Mid-Atlantic Tours program, you must work with the tour manager to complete a letter of agreement by March 27th, 2025. The letter can be drafted by you as the presenter or by the tour manager, as is your preference, but the tour manager must have your countersigned letter in hand by March 27, 2025, in order for them to consider recommending you for funding to Mid-Atlantic Arts. The letter of agreement needs to include all of the information listed here, but don't worry, this list can be found in the program guidelines published on the program page of our website, so you don't need to worry about writing all this down. I will go through it though. So what we need in that letter of agreement includes the presenter name and contact info, as well as the roster artist name, details for that minimum of 2 engagement activities, including the date, time, location, as it's known at the time of agreement. Just a note to keep in mind that all engagement activities need to take place between July 1st, 2025 and June 30, 2026. The letter of agreement also needs to list the negotiated artist compensation. You can state that that artist compensation is pending funding from Mid-Atlantic Arts. That's totally fine. You should include the proposed negotiated grant amount from Mid-Atlantic Arts, as well as a mutual statement on accessibility planning for the engagement, which I'll talk more about on the next slide. Once you've got this letter of agreement between you and the tour manager, hold on to a copy because if you are recommended for funding, Mid-Atlantic Arts will ask you to upload the letter along with your application materials, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But before we do that, let me talk a bit more about the statement on accessibility. This statement should describe the plans surrounding accessibility for the engagement. Since Mid-Atlantic Tour's funds are given through a National Endowment for the Arts grant, all grantees must comply with ADA requirements. So your statements can be as direct as acknowledging that the presenter and roster artist will collaborate to ensure all ADA or American with Disabilities Act requirements are met for all engagement activities. Or you could do something like either of these two options that are up on the screen, which I'll read through now. One option could be saying something like, regarding accessibility for the projects, in addition to meeting all ADA requirements, the presenter will provide the following accessibility resources. Something like, you'll have ASL interpretation on this day, or a sensory-friendly performance on this day. These are just examples. It could be any kind of accessibility initiative that is the right fit for your community in dialogue with the artist. Or another option is that the presenter could commit to a certain amount of financial reserve specifically for accessibility related initiatives in the LOA. So now we are going to move into talking about the application process. I'll pass it back to Andrew.
So, as we said earlier, presenters must have completed a letter of agreement with the tour manager by March 27th, 2025. The tour manager will then share that agreement with me and Sarah when making their funding recommendations. In May 2025, presenters who've received a funding recommendation from a tour manager will receive a tentative award notification from Mid-Atlantic Arts, along with an invitation to apply for that recommended amount of funding through Smart Simple, which is Mid-Atlantic Arts' online grant portal. The application is made up of three components: the letter of agreement, the narrative, and the budget. We just talked about the letter of agreement. You'll hold on to a copy of that to upload with your application as well. Now let's talk about your narrative and budget. There are two narrative questions presenters invited to apply for Mid-Atlantic Tours support will receive. You can also find these questions in the guidelines. We'll ask first that you describe the planned community engagement activities, and second, to discuss the barriers of participation for your organization's audiences, artists, and staff, and how you plan to address these barriers for your planned engagement with the roster artist. The third component of the application process is the budget. The presenter will be asked to submit a project budget that includes the negotiated artist compensation as described in the letter of agreement, as well as the requested subsidy amount. Mid-Atlantic Arts will provide a budget template for you in the application. So next, when will you get the grant payment? If awarded, 100% of the presenter grant will be released at the beginning of the grant period, which is approximately 30 days prior to the first engagement activity, provided that each of the following items have been completed already by the grant recipient. First, you'll need to review and sign the grant award agreement. And then second, you need to upload a copy of the countersigned contract with the proposed artist in the Mid-Atlantic Arts grant portal no later than 30 days prior to the first engagement activity. This would be your contract between your venue and the artist. A final report for a funded project also must be completed and is due no later than 30 days after the conclusion of the final engagement activity. The final report, which is made available in the Mid-Atlantic Arts portal at the time the grant is awarded, requires a brief description of the completed project along with an accounting of expenditures for the funded activities. Final report instructions are provided as part of the grant award document, so you know exactly the information that you're going to need in order to fill out that final report.
Thanks, Andrew. Here are, this slide shows an overview of the important dates for this program, which I'll also read through now. As we mentioned, the Mid-Atlantic Tour's roster artist share is coming up later this month, November 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern. This is a great opportunity for you to hear directly from the roster artists and learn more about the work. So I really encourage you to attend if you're able. We will also share a recording on our website after the event takes place. We will also put the registration in the chat again now. And then the March 27th, 2025 date is really important to keep in mind as the final date by which you must have your letter of agreement countersigned and sent to the tour manager that you want to work with for the program. We are then moving into May for invited presenters. Will be invited to complete a short application, as Andrew just described. Formal award notifications will be sent in early July of 2025. And the project period for this program is July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. And as a reminder, the performances funded through this program must take place during that window.